Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
We're them. We're definitely, that's who we are.
The two incarnate. Hi. Well, welcome back. Hope you're all well. And Steve isn't well.
No.
He's progressively getting worse. And so we said, well, I said to myself, I'm going to milk this dude for every bit of topic he has left before the dry cough takes him out.
I'm glad you continued there. For a second, I was afraid you were going to stop at, I'm going to milk this dude, and I did not agree to that, but...
Well, it's for Patreon subscribers. That's the video content. If you want to see, the Non-Essential Podcast milk a man, then that's $5 a month.
Onlyfans.com. Here we come.
Nofans.com. Quicklylosefans.com.
That's it.
But yeah, if you haven't listened to the show before, the Non-Essential Podcast, we just are bored and tell each other stories every week. And yeah, that's it. It's not a very good idea for a show in retrospect.
Well, it's not a bad idea, but it's literally the most minimum idea. Like generally,
it's just
you'd sit around and start to be like
it's just hard to sell to people.
We're going to tell stories every week. And the next step is generally like, okay, what kind of stories? But we stopped right there. We're just like, we're going to talk every week. Yeah, I'm on board with that. Let's go.
Yeah. It's just like, I don't know, but like whatever can technically fill 30 minutes.
We'll be stretching it this week to fill 30. This is my topic this week is short, but it falls right in our wheelhouse. Like I said off air, I kind of had to do a double check real quick to make sure that we hadn't talked about it before. It's a him. I keep saying it. There's a very good chance. I mean, this is right in your wheelhouse, Ben. There's a good chance that if you don't know this guy, like just from your like hobby,
you'll just say the name, and I'll be like, "Hang on, I'll take it from here."
You've probably at least come across him like in your show research, but
it's funny that you say like wheelhouse. Like we say wheelhouse all the time, but like we talk about, like we said, like we talk about everything. And I was just thinking about like how last week's episode, I probably brought the best guy in terms of like character wise, the best individual I've ever talked about on this show, and he lopped some dude's nuts off. So like that's, you know, it says something about like what I fucking wallow in as like interesting subject matter. But
yeah, well, I mean, you and me both, we kind of fall in the same tonal range. There's been a couple that I've done that were like I think my first one, or one of the first couple, was that couple that like were shark researchers, and it's like, oh yeah, there was nothing morbid or tragic or anything about that topic. And then it's like, yeah, that's kind of boring. Let's go with the like. Maybe that's what instead of being like, yeah, the Non-Essential Podcast, we talk about stuff. It's like the Non-Essential Podcast, we make you want to jump off a bridge.
The unrecommended podcast.
No hope for humanity.
Like, yeah, like in the perfect time where people want escapism is like, you know, yeah, it sucks right now, but it was also pretty bad when this shark came out of the water with an AK-47. You know, it's...
This guy captured it and set it loose on the orphanage. Like,
yeah, like... Anyway, so what do we got today, Steve?
All right. So, Diogo Alves was born in Galicia, Spain in 1810.
Hold on. Diogo?
Yeah, Diogo. Not Diego. Not... Well, that's the only one that said. It's specifically Diogo.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard that.
Spanish. Yeah, I'd not either. But maybe in 1810 they hadn't invented E's yet, so it wasn't Diego, it was Diogo. He earned the nickname Pancada when he survived falling from a horse at a young age, which it's one of those cases where I don't know if the translated is better or worse, because Pancada means blow, which I assume they mean like blow to the head. But it's like
cocaine.
Well, that's the thing. It's like on the one hand, like Blow, that seems like a really bad name, like just dumb nickname, but it also kind of seems very like Scarfacey.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. So this guy he just went by Blow. Sounds like he should be played by Brad Pitt, though. When he was 19, his parents sent him to Lisbon, Portugal, to work, which, like, when I first was reading through this, parents sent him to work, and I was picturing, like, at a young age, they needed, support for the family, so they sent their child off to work. Then I went back and read it again, and it said at the age 19. So now I'm picturing, like, he was just sitting around the house, and they're like, get the fuck out of our house.
Yeah.
We're going to Portugal. Like, I
work.
imagine they tried to get him jobs at, like, the local places first, and he just kept, like, showing back up at home with no job. And they're like, okay, you're going to a different country. Get the hell out.
Oddly enough, people didn't want to hire a guy who insisted on being called Blow.
Blow. Although, in fairness, they're like, we're not calling you Blow. And it's like, fine, my name's Diogo. They're like, we're calling you Blow.
We're calling you Blow. Dio Blow.
Dio Blow. So anyway, at 19, he moved to Portugal. There he took and lost various jobs. Like many teens, he didn't really know what he wanted to do. But he seemed to know that he didn't want to work.
I was just going to say, like most teens, you know, there's a long list of shit you're not into. And at the top of it is anything like physically exerting.
Yeah, well, that's right in that point in your life where, like, as a kid, you're like, I can't wait to be an adult. I can do whatever I want. And then you get old enough to realize, like, well, I got to have money to do whatever I want. And then you're like, this is how you get money? This isn't worth it.
And now I don't have time to do anything I want except fucking...
Right.
It
was all a
money.
fucking lie, and I didn't figure it out until it was too late.
Yeah.
So to Diogo, an honest day's labor was too much effort for too little pay, which is... kind of true to today. That wasn't an 1800s thing. I mean,
yeah. So far, he's not wrong. The economy is a lie, and it will fuck you. So far, so good.
Especially if you're like a not particularly skilled 19-year-old.
Yeah, which I mean, who is a particularly skilled 19-year-old? Like
Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, well,
I don't mean back then. I mean right now. Like he's reincarnated as a
some 19-year-old guitar player. Is
no, he's not skilled
him.
in guitar. He's skilled in something like latte art or something.
The Jimi Hendrix of latte. There's some asshole on YouTube, is calling himself the fucking Jimi Hendrix of lattes.
Latte art.
And it makes me not want to have a latte ever again until that man is dead.
So your mission listener... Oh, wait, no.
We are not advocating for stalking any YouTube coffee celebrities.
Yeah, no matter how dumb their channel is,
because know it's dumb.
Diogo became good friends with a Maria Gertrudis. She had a nickname too, but it was like not like it wasn't something you could translate. It was just like another common name, and I can't say it, so she's going to be Maria.
Suck.
I can say Maria.
So yeah. Suck and blow.
Suck and blow. And I put good friends in quotes because it just said like he met her, and then she'll play like she's obviously influential to him, but it never really specifically said that they were like hooking up or like lovers or what.
Just a classic duo.
Yeah. But she was a local innkeeper.
See, if it were happening today, they would be podcast hosts.
Yeah. Diogo had quit writing to his parents, probably because, dear Ma and Pa, I quit work, but the good news is I took up booze instead. Isn't really a letter that most kids want to write. But by this point, Diogo had decided that he just wasn't going to work anymore. He preferred to spend his days drinking and gambling, which of course he'd prefer. I'd prefer that.
I prefer that right now.
Right. If it was sustainable, that's the problem, is it's not a sustainable...
Well, not with that attitude.
It might be if you're... Yeah, I guess if it...
But if you got Lady Luck on your mind, who's to say how high that ladder can go?
That's true. I guess I just assumed that he was as bad at gambling as I am.
I read that book, The Secret, and if you go to Vegas with a positive mental attitude, you'll never lose.
Actually, that whole line of books and reasoning translates back to that that fucker that I can't think of his name off the top of my head that we did like the 3-part series on.
Oh, so. Yeah. You only talked about him. You only had to work on him for 3 weeks.
I only can't think of his name because I'm in like Diogo mode here. I know because I still reference that guy all the time. But,
it's just a traumatizing...
Napoleon Hill, that's what it was. Nap Hill.
Oh, God. Yeah. Now I remember.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, Diogo decided, I'm just not going to work. That's no fun. I'm going to gamble and drink, which I applaud. You know, that's the
At
kind
least
of
he has
decision
a plan,
that most of us...
know?
Yeah.
A lot of 19-year-olds don't think that far ahead. Like, at least there was like the gambling attached to it. I would just drink, and not even think to gamble.
Now, of course, he quickly ran out of money.
Good shot.
So his solution, of course, was to turn to crime.
Hell yeah.
There's actually some debate as to like whether Diogo himself kind of came up with this idea or if he was persuaded by Maria. But why like earn money when you can just take it instead? So he decided to start robbing people, which, again, I applaud it's like, screw it. I want money. They have money. I'm taking it. It just seems very decisive.
It's very entrepreneurial.
All right. So this next part, I can't decide if Diogo was smart or if he was stupid, but rather than target wealthy individuals who had more money, he chose to rob the relatively poor farmers who would pass through town via the aqueduct. So on the one hand, like these victims didn't have like all that much to steal, but on the other, crimes against these types of victims tend to not get investigated nearly as thoroughly as they would if you were like,
right. Fuck, you took $20. Those farmers are like giving them their money and shit and just being like, what the fuck, dude? Like, of all the people you could stop like this.
Yeah. It's like, you're robbing people because you're poor, but I'm poor too. Like, I wonder how many of them he robbed and then they turned around and robbed him back and it just like went back and forth a few times until one of them got tired.
We're heading into the same bar, and if you sat next to me, I would have bought you a drink after an hour. So, like...
Well, technically, you're still buying me a drink. Ha ha ha.
Fuck you, Diogo.
But it could have simply been a matter of opportunity, as Diogo had managed to get a hold of a aqueduct key, or rather like a copy of one, and was basically like living there, using the structure to like hide out. So whether due to like cunning forethought, like I said, I don't know if it was his plan to like target these people specifically because he could get away with it easier, or if it was just like, hey, these people are here, I need to rob some people. Yeah, it works out for everybody. But whether due to cunning forethought or sheer luck, Diogo's setup worked. He'd spend the next 3 years, from 1836 to 1839, robbing people. By the time the aqueduct was shut down, which I'll get to more of that in a minute, Diogo had ambushed at least 70 people. Dude. Of course, you don't rob 70 people over the course of 3 years and get away with it if you leave witnesses. So here again, Diogo's chosen location up atop the aqueduct proved quite advantageous, because as it turns out, the area where the robberies took place was some 60 meters above ground. For us American folk, that's about 180 feet high. So once Diogo robbed his victims, he'd toss them over the side of the aqueduct. And then I imagine he did one of those like cartoony villain things where he like exaggeratedly, I'm doing it right now, but of course this is audio podcast, you can't see it, but like kind of exaggeratedly leans out and puts his hand to his ear and listens for the splats. It's not that the bodies wouldn't be found. It was more that the 180-foot fall would leave them very difficult to identify, and also left them in a condition where any signs of like struggle or foul play, such as robbery, would be impossible to discover, at least for 1800s stupid police.
But at a certain point, there would be so many bodies, it's like, we could just probably hide like a cop up there. After a while.
You would think.
And after a while, the dude would show up.
So the first like victim or two, could be written off as tragic accidents. Sometimes a man's just got to pee off the edge of a 180-foot aqueduct, and occasionally a dude's going to slip.
Yeah, sometimes you... Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of us that if you found yourself at the top of an 180-foot thick structure, would be like, I'm peeing off the edge. Or, whatever. Or I guess the modern thing is I'm taking an Instagram selfie on the, that kind of, people fall because they're stupid.
Yeah. I saw one of the guys on Giant Bomb that was on a stream the other day, and he phrased it really well, where it's like, the fear of heights doesn't come from the fear of the height. It's the fear of yourself at the top of a really high place. So,
which explains my fear of height, because I know myself really damn well, and I am not to be trusted.
Yeah, believe me, if I was fucking Batman, you wouldn't give a shit. But I'm uncoordinated and stupid, and I know, like, I shouldn't be near the edge of stuff.
That exact attitude's the problem. We've got an area around here, actually 2 separate ones, where there's 2 or 3 people a year that die on it. And the problem is, you can say that, it's like, I trust myself, I'm not going to fall. And then the edge breaks away or something, and it's like, well, yeah, that's the other problem there, buddy. But whatever. Darwinism.
That's what he meant. that's what he wrote about. Every tragic accident was just Darwinism. Nature at work.
So anyway, like I said, the first couple victims you could write off as, just tragic accidents. But again, Diogo racked up some 70 victims over the course of 3 years. So if I did my math correctly, which I did because I'm a math genius, that's an average of 1 victim every 15 days. So
he made it like a regular job, like part-time, but regular.
Yeah. What an idiot. He's like, I don't like to work. It's like, you're working right now. And then he turns around and says, when you love what you do, it's not work.
It's just this merry fucking happy-go-lucky serial killer.
Yeah, that's not actually how they describe his personality at all, if you could believe it.
He's like whistling, like...
yeah. Another great day out. Sun's shining.
Thwack.
Victim screaming all the way down. Oh. So after, like, I guess maybe like the 27th body or so, probably, officials began to get suspicious.
Oh, good.
That's an awful lot of dead farmers for this to be a mere coincidence. So they
went to our best detective, and he said, I have a hunch.
Yeah, that's exactly. They got together, and they thought, these might not be accidents. So they decided that these were probably suicides.
Yeah, I agree. Can't be rushing to conclusions. To be fair, in their defense, who would kill a bunch of poor farmers? It makes way more sense that, like, poor people would just be done with it. And
well, especially if you're talking to rich people, because they're like, the poors, what do they have to live for? That makes sense. I would throw myself off an aqueduct too. Like this one had a wife and kids at home. He's like, but he's poor. Nobody wants a poor wife and kids. So for years, they continued to just like very frequently find splattered farmers. It got so bad that in 1839, they closed the aqueduct to discourage copycat suicide jumps. So literally by the 70th body, they still haven't figured anything out. They just think, these people are just like, they heard about these 68 farmers that jumped to their death, and these last 2 were like, I want in on that action. Like, it's like, wait, you can fall to your death? I gotta check this out. But unfortunately for Diogo, though their reasoning was idiotic, the result was the same. With nobody traveling on the aqueducts, there was nobody left to rob. And I'm just picturing the smug smiles on the wealthy officials' faces when the bodies quit appearing. They're like, yes, we solved the suicide problem among the poors. Pip pip, gents.
Simply take away tall things.
Once again, it was up to us. I don't know.
I don't know why they're like 1700
they're
British generals.
Yeah, we're in Portugal, but whatever. It's probably white British people running Portugal at the time. I mean, that's right in that heart of the expansionism era.
The only solution I can think of, gents, is that we do these suicides in an orderly fashion, one at a time, at the top of the aqueduct. Please form a line.
If you want to kill yourself, there's going to be a new tax on that. How can we get money out of this?
And the moment a body hits another body first and not the pavement, then we stop for the day.
So, anyway, they closed the aqueduct, and that kind of put the kibosh on Diogo's master plan. So he took his spoils and retired and lived a long, healthy life. It's a thing that I could say, and it would probably still be an interesting serial killer story. But of course, that's not what happened. Very few criminals ever plan for retirement.
I was going to say, I'm sure he took what he got and put it right into savings.
Yeah, they don't retire. They just keep on criminaling.
Yeah, well, you know, when you're good at something, or you at least think you're good at something because the local authorities are fucking dipshits.
I know. How awesome would that be? You're like, I'm going to try. It's like, this isn't sustainable. They're going to figure this out, but until they do, I'm going to. And then they're like, the police start sniffing around. You're like, oh yeah, no, yeah, I saw that guy. He looked really sad. And they're like, yeah, that's what we thought, suicide. And you're like, really?
Well, it's like that point in Goodfellas where, like, you know, the dude's wife is talking about, like, yeah, the cops showed up all the time, and I would just sign their warrant, let them look around the house, and keep watching TV. You know? Yeah. Just like it just becomes routine.
So, Diogo formed a small gang and began robbing and murdering people in their homes instead. As you can imagine, this method drew a lot more attention. To which the local police declared that now families were committing mass suicide by knifing themselves to death.
But now Diogo had a gang, so he was too cool to arrest.
Regardless, the police didn't, you know, they were like, hey, wait, there's murders going on now. Regular murders, we know how to handle those. Diogo and his crew got away with it for a very, very short time, but they were eventually caught after murdering the family of a doctor. Maria, the innkeeper that he was kind of lovers, friends, whatever with, she was involved in this gang as well. But her own daughter, who was then 11 years old, testified against her and Diogo and the rest of the gang in court. So on the one hand, I was like, good for that kid, like standing, and then it's like, then I got to thinking about kids, and what probably happened is, like, her daughter wanted to stay up late and watch Game of Thrones or something, and her mom was like, no, that show's too old for you. It's your bedtime. And she got pissed. And she's like, well, fuck you. I'm turning you in for all those murders you did.
Yeah, and then only to find out that Game of Thrones fucking sucked by the end. And then they're like, no, I fucking killed my mom for this.
Well, fortunately for Maria, she wasn't killed. She was exiled to Africa, well, to like one of the colonies in Africa. But
that's Diogo, shitty. Like, sorry, Africa. Like,
well, and I wonder if they're like, oh, we're exiling your mom, but she's your mom, so you have to go with her. So thanks for turning it in, but now you're living in this, like, work colony.
I mean, that's typical cop shit, but just, like, as a nation, to be like, hey, we're going to throw this fucking murder gang over your way.
Yeah, well, true.
We don't really have a spot for them.
You guys are savages, right?
And they're like,
we're still allowed to say that, right?
Right, we're all friends here, right? There's a little casual racism between friends, right? And those dudes are just like staring at him like, man, fuck these guys. You know, as soon as you send them here, we're going to just put them in prison.
Yeah, well, who knows? I didn't look up to see what her ultimate fate was, but she was shipped off to Africa. Diogo was not. He was sentenced to death by hanging. In fact, his execution is often cited as the last execution by hanging that Portugal ever did.
Was he hung off the aqueduct?
He should have been.
He
liked those scenes in Red Dead. Yeah. So, yeah, he's viewed as the last hanging execution in Portugal, except for that's not true. There was actually one other person after him. He was second to last. The more interesting part of Diego's execution was the fact that scientists from Lisbon's medical school had become interested in trying to determine, like, what led Diogo to murder so many farmers. And being near the middle of the 19th century, this was a job that was best done after his death. You know, psychology wasn't a thing yet. So Diogo's head was removed and preserved. Unfortunately, they were never able to figure out what made Diogo murder because they were just looking at a severed head, and that can only tell you so much.
Yeah, there are pictures of it, and it's like so fucking eerie.
Yeah.
And also, you're like, yeah, completely not scientific. Beyond just like, yeah, he's a weird looking bastard.
It would have been around like 1840, probably 1839, 1840. I'm sure you can look up his execution date, but I didn't care. But that was like kind of right at the height of that, like, what do they call it, craniology or whatever, where they took those like that claw thing and like measured people's head dimensions. Or like, oh yeah, this guy's head is this ratio to this ratio. He's a killer. And it was a branch of science that lasted like exactly 2.5 years because it was complete bullshit. But I imagine that's what they were doing. But I do like the thought of a bunch of baffled scientists sitting around staring at this head for hours before, like,
it's
one of
really
them says,
a fucking Futurama head in a jar.
Yeah, I mean, that's... And so you can picture, like, just a room full of what are supposed to be, like, the area's smartest people just kind of, And then, like, one of them probably was like, by any chance, before they killed him, did any of you happen to, like, try asking him why he did it? And then at that point, all the scientists were just like, fuck. We should have thought of that sooner.
Damn. We were so happy to, like, do the last hanging. God damn it. Like, but I mean, like, he's one of the ones, and we've talked about him before. Like, you know, there are serial killers who kind of, their motivations are really just primal and all over the place. And then there are guys like him who I'd lump more into, like, the acid bath murderer or something, where it's just like you turn serial killing into a business. And yeah. Like, that's
what it sounds like. No, I did, like, I started to kind of hint at that. It says that he had a pretty bad, like, temper. He was a pretty violent individual to begin with, but I don't think it was I'm violent and I want to murder because it's the thrill of murder. I 100% agree with you. It sounds like it was just like, hey, I can support my way of living by killing these people. And he had that part of him that every serial killer has, where it's like, killing these people didn't mean anything. Like, he knew it was wrong, but to him, it didn't bother him. Right. It was just
when it comes to, like, their motivations, like, there's the commonality is just like, there's just not a regard for human life versus your own desires and impulses. It's just what those desires are. Like, for someone like him, it's really materialistic, and a lot of, like, the famous, serial killers, at least in America, and a lot of the more prominent ones around the world, it's a more, like, psychological, sexual
control
thing.
Type fantasies, or just
but it's still, like, however you fucking spin it, it's evil. It's just, it's always weird to me where it's like, because like you said, it becomes a routine. Like, you're putting in work, and you could put that work into an actual job and probably get more reliable money any other way, but there's just some switch in people. And like, with this guy, he's going after poor people, like most serial killers do, because like you said, the authorities aren't going to look in as closely.
Well, right. Their regard for the people that were dying was so little that they, even after 70 bodies, were convinced that these were like, oh, yeah, it's just 70 suicides in 3 years. Wow, that's weird. Like, without even investigating, like, wait, maybe it's not. And it's like, no, it definitely is. They're poor. Why wouldn't they want to kill themselves?
But it does make you, like, even, you can't not think about, like, what's going on with this coronavirus shit right now and the economy and stuff, and how frustrating it is. Like, just how many people have to die for the economy to work the way it does. And I know this was in Portugal. It's a sort of, it's not the exact same situation. It varies from nation to nation. But just, there's, you know, like, how many, like, murderers out there were of this ilk, of just, like, it was just their job. You know, and, like, just stealing shit and making sure you couldn't catch them afterwards was just how their business operated, and how you could take care of that if you took better care of your own citizens. Like, you could completely prevent people like this dude existing, because you know there's a lot more that we didn't catch. You know?
And then you can make the very, not crazy argument in my mind anyway, that's like, well, the difference between a serial killer and a mogul is that a mogul does it through business and a serial killer physically. Like how many of these companies out there are literally killing people through their policies to make money, and we're like, that's business. But you push a dude off an aqueduct, and that's wrong. And of course, I'm not saying that it's not fair to call the pushing the dude off the aqueduct wrong, but it's weird how society, like, the value between money and human life is a constantly shifting, like, very contextual thing, which is odd to me.
It's funny how, like, the forming of a decision or the framing of a decision can lead to equal, or in some cases in the business mogul world, worse outcomes but as a society, we judge one to be okay. But like, like this dude killed 70 people. There are companies that kill, 700 people in a month. On a global scale, whether it's directly or indirectly. So, it's a very, yes, the dude should have been brought to justice, but it's just like, realizing like in some ways, these circumstances that allow a dude like that to come about totally come from not economically protecting your people, Because if you did, he would have drank and gambled, and yeah, he would have been a piece of shit mooching off of the system, but 70 people wouldn't have died.
Unless the other option, and I didn't really want to jump to it because it's such a cliche, unfair like thing, is this like, maybe this Maria, like he didn't even need the money. It was just, she's the one that got off. She was the like psychopath that just
always
got off
passing the buck to the woman.
Yeah, to the woman.
Classic.
Ever since Eve. And first Eve ate the apple, and she was the one that threw Adam out of the garden, and now this. Jeez.
And then she's
women,
we
right?
we all remember when Eve ate the apple and then said, "Let's go serial killing." A classic Bible story.
Well, technically, I think the exact verse is God threw them out and said, now you'll have to toil for your whatever and have pain. And also you have to serial kill. Like, maybe God's the ultimate, like, what do they call that when you, like, trick somebody else into doing it? You're a serial killer, but you trick somebody else into doing it for you. Maybe that's where the...
Adam, you will now have to learn what an aqueduct is, because Eve is about to get real fucking weird on you.
But anyway. So, yeah, that's Diogo Alves. Yeah. I need to stick to these like Spanish speaking people because I can pronounce their names a little bit better than some of these other ones that we've done.
I don't know. I think you have a knack for Nordic mythology. Anyway, yeah, that's the show this week. And next week we'll have more heads in jars.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was Ben kind of mentioned it, but you can. The head is actually still around. You can go visit it if you can go to the Lisbon University.
I'm not kidding. Like, it's so fucking weird. Like the idea that thing is sitting in a room. Yeah. Just like, and a janitor's turning off the lights at some point, and that thing is just there.
I know. That's what I've had. We've talked about it a little bit on air, a little bit off there, but I've had jobs that have creepy elements to them, but nothing like, hey, can you go in that room where that serial killer's head is and turn the lights off?
Yeah.
Like, we forgot to do it on our way out. And so, yeah.
I'm pretty sure I told this story. It might have been back on the days we were doing the video game podcast. But the job I used to have was this kind of, they sold like comic books and movies and shit and music. They were kind of like a variety store. And at some point we got a fucking like life-size Batman statue thing that nobody told me about. So I'm the first one in the building in the mornings. Like, I turn on the lights and shit and I go to the back room and nobody told me this fucking thing was back there. So there's just a life-size silhouette of Batman in the darkness. And I flip on the light and like Batman's staring me down. I'm like, oh shit.
I didn't do it. It was the Joker.
And I'm like, well, I always knew I would go out this way to a worthy foe.
When I worked security, one of the few places that I'd worked at a couple different, like, whatever. But one of them was just a big state workers' comp building here in Columbus, and it's like 33 stories and blah, blah, blah. But I worked third shift a lot of it. And third shift, there's basically nobody in the building other than like some of the IT people that, had to be there around the clock. Yeah. And so our job was basically to go floor to floor and just make sure like the lights were off that were supposed to be off, that nobody left like a coffee pot on that could catch the place on fire, just that. Basically, we were more like groundskeepers almost than security. And yeah, there was a couple times, especially like around Christmas. I remember once one of the floors, the way my company did it is there was like little RF like stickers around each of the floors, and they'd be in random places. Like part of your job when you first got it was learning where they're at, but you had to scan them with the scanner, and it was their way to prove that you were actually going around doing your job. Which in reality, what that means is you're focused 100% on going to the sticker and scanning the sticker. So if there was something like a coffee pot on, you probably would miss it.
You grab all the stickers, bring them back to your desk, and then at the end of your shift, go out and take
That'd actually be more work. But anyway, yeah. A couple times various floors would have like person-shaped cutouts for different reasons. And anytime, like there was never, I don't have a particular story where it's like, oh, I came around the corner and nearly shit myself to creepypasta.
By that, man.
But there's just no way, if you're a regular human being, and I don't care how tough you like want to act, but when you catch a human shape out of the corner of your eye, especially when you know there shouldn't be a person there, it catches your attention, and like, maybe the hair stick out and you look real quick and then you're like, oh, it's cardboard. But it's a very, very unpleasant like sensation to like catch a human shape out of the corner of your eye. So yeah. But I didn't have, and it could be creepy. Like I remember, I probably should save it and like write a creepypasta about it, but you do stuff like your brain tends to wander on those like real menial jobs. And like I remember there was one floor that had a painting, and it I should know it because it was a famous painting. It was a copy of it, of course, but it had like people in it. And like one night you're doing your rounds and you see the painting and you just start thinking like, what if like next time I do my rounds, I look and the people are in like a different position. And every time you start to notice like the people are moving, and it's not that you're afraid of that's going to happen, but you just start like imagining things like that. And then the more, I don't know about you, the more I imagine it, the more like you almost like build up the dread right before you get to that painting. Like, yeah, what if that did happen? That would be really whatever. So I know if I had to like do rounds on a floor with a serial killer's head in a jar, that just it would not be pleasant. I would do it because at the end of the day, I think logic wins out, and you're like, it's just a. Well, I'll say just a head in a jar. Like that's
you could do a really fucking good story though about like a janitor who like goes crazy, fucking because of this serial killer head in a jar.
Yeah.
Tune in next week when I write a story about the janitor who goes crazy.
It's called Smucker's Man.
I don't know why it's called Smucker's Man, but
Smucker's comes in a jar. I don't know. Let's try to think of something that comes in a jar.
We preserve this serial killer head in only preservatives that Smucker's can provide.
And then that dude on the Today Show is like, this Smucker's head in a jar turned 183 today. I don't know if you've ever seen that guy that does the birthdays for people that are like over 100 years old.
And now we're taking the jelly out and putting it on my lunch. Let's see what happens. Anyway.
Well, I guarantee we could find a student at a university that you could convince, at least with enough booze, to take a swig out of that jar.
Yeah, there's some fucking smart ass kid who probably swapped it out, like the fluid in there for vodka. The fucking head's just all fucked up. But anyway, hopefully the students around that area, we just gave you some good ideas. Bye. That's it. We're done.
Yeah.
I'm done. Bye.
I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. I'll save my thought for off air. Okay. Take that, listeners.
Subscribe to our Patreon to get the Discord so you can hear our dumbass thoughts that go an hour and a half after the show's over.